And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we've got a bunch of new e-bike related stories to talk about this week in the news. Everything from new e-bikes that are designed to replace golf carts. We've got a bunch of new police departments are adopting e-bikes. Some new unveilings from 5-person cargo e-bikes to Tenways new very lightweight chain drive commuter e-bike. We've got a startup trying to challenge GoGro to be the new mini battery standard. Russian soldiers are now using electric motorcycles on the front lines, believe it or not, and more where that's coming from. But where are we going to start with this week?
All right. Today, Fairway wants to replace golf carts with this funky electric bike.
Yeah, this one, I really wish you guys could see this. So hopefully you're watching along with us. If not, then check out this story on Electrek because this is a wild looking 3-wheeled electric bike that is basically meant to serve the purpose of a golf cart, but give you the experience of pedaling instead of the sort of more, I guess, lazy experience of just driving a golf cart around the golf course. Because I think, golf is probably a fun sport for a lot of people, but I don't think anyone would consider it like a high exercise type of sport, especially if you're using the golf cart. So this is an alternative that's was developed by some golfing entrepreneurs that said, I'm getting older. I still want to golf, but I don't want to have to rely on a golf cart. Like I still want to get a bit of exercise out there, even if my knees aren't quite allowing me to walk 18 holes of golf. So what they've come up with here is a what's called a tadpole trike. I mean, it's got the 2 wheels in the front, which I know a lot of people tend to prefer, just because it makes the whole thing a lot more stable feeling. It's interesting because the actual e-bike components are surprisingly good. I say surprisingly because this doesn't actually need to go that far. You think you're staying on a golf course, but it's still got a mid-drive motor. It's still got a nicely customized frame. It's got mag wheels that are cast instead of spokes. Basically, there's a lot of interesting bike parts on here that you generally see on nicer, higher end e-bikes, especially the kinds that people are using for longer commutes, that sort of thing, where they rely on the bike. And this is more of a recreational, maybe I don't know how far you actually travel in 18 holes of golf. I can't imagine it's more than a couple of miles, in total, like walking distance, or in this case, pedaling distance. So it's kind of cool to see all of these nicer parts here. But it does surprise me that it's this nicely made. That also means that the price is going to get jacked up as well. I think that they're planning to roll this thing out. Fairway said that they're looking at like a $6,999 price tag for consumers, but I think most of their sales are going to be targeted more towards golf courses that would use this as like a rental or in their fleets, the same way that people would rent a golf cart while they're out there on the links. So I can't imagine too many people are going to be wanting to buy this on like the consumer side, though it seems like they're ready to supply it. But I can definitely see this being more popular as a rental for people that just want to have that like sort of fun, different biking experience. Toss your golf bag on the front of this cargo bike and pedal around instead of just driving a golf cart. Now the downside is this is a one-seater, right? So if you're 4 people, you can rent one golf cart, and that's gonna, take the whole group out. Assuming, I guess, you can get all 4 bags on there. Even for two people to a cart, it's going to be a little more economical than everyone having to rent a an electric golf cart bike. But you can't beat the fitness gains of actually pedaling around versus using a golf cart. So as someone who doesn't golf, it seems like a great idea to me. Do you golf much, Seth?
I do a little bit, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the, part of golfing is like you're hanging out with your buddies, and this would be on, you'd be on separate vehicles. But that said, you could have two of these, obviously, and you don't hit the ball to the same spot. So part of driving around a golf cart is like you go to your ball, your buddy goes to their ball, and if you have two separate vehicles, then that's easy. If you have one vehicle, then you're dropping them off, and somebody else, it becomes kind of a thing. 4-person golf carts don't really exist in my experience. Maybe in the other in the because you got 4 bags, that would be a lot.
I
But
guess that's more like the neighborhood vehicles. They do like the four seaters, but not really for golf use.
Right, right. So, but two-seat golf buggies are pretty popular, and the good thing is like a lot of I've seen a lot recently going to electric. I mean, it's just easier, right? Like you don't have to do gas, and it's not stinky and whatever. I mean, there are a lot of like natural gas ones, but I'm seeing more and more electric ones. I was recently in Las Vegas at a birthday party, and I was surprised to learn that they had electric golf carts there because it gets quite hot during the day, and um, it was just nice to see. Um, and obviously, with the bike thing, it would be even better because theoretically, um, you would get a little bit of exercise. Though it looks like this has a really good with Bafang motor mid drive.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it does have a throttle as well. So ideally, you're using the pedal assist feature, you're getting some exercise here. But for those that want to treat it more like a golf cart and don't want to be relying on pedaling, because it's a Bafang mid-drive motor, they say that it does include that throttle, which is going to be, a nice little addition at, once you're on the 16th, 17th, 18th hole and it's
Hmm.
getting a bit later in the day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about bikes is you get that wind if it's a hot day. Also, I see in the back they have a ball cleaner attached or uh,
Well, that's not the
holder.
exhaust pipe.
It's not the exhaust pipe. It's not the water bottle. Although you probably could put a certain bottle of wine back there if that's how you roll. Um, golf is one of those sports where drinking kind of feels like part of the game. So certainly wouldn't be weird to see that on the golf course. I like it. I think the single golfer thing is a big part of it. Like it's not fun to drive your buddy to his ball and then you have to drive to your ball. And for me, it's like I have to find the ball. It takes another half hour to get it out of the woods. So um, cool. Price at 7,000. That's not nothing. I'm sure you could ride this to the golf course in some cases. Um, but I think there's definitely a use case for it. I like the idea.
Yeah, and I think what they're saying is that, at 7,000, it's a lot cheaper than a golf cart. Now, on the other hand, it obviously doesn't have quite the same utility as a golf cart, especially the multi-seater. But I get how they're trying to sort of anchor it compared to golf cart prices, which a lot of people don't realize are like crazy expensive nowadays. Like a cheap basic golf cart is like $8,000, $9,000, and they go up quickly from there.
What if you get one from China on Alibaba?
Um, I think you can find them starting closer to like two or three, but by the time they get to the US, you're probably looking at least twice to three times that.
Oh wow, I thought you had
Yeah.
found something.
Well, for example, my mini truck that was $2,000 from China
Right,
ended up costing me close to eight. Now that was in a higher shipping time a few years ago, so
right.
maybe now you could get it for six, but you're definitely going to be paying
Th-
like a significant premium.
Then I see you had like some small vehicle, like it was red or something
Oh,
recently.
yeah, so that's actually one I didn't get it from China. That I mean, it is Chinese made, but that's a US-based company. It's Candy America. You might
Right,
remember them from their sort of like non-launch of NEVs a few years ago.
right.
So now they focus on purely off-road vehicles, and they have the what's called the Candy Mini, and
Hmm.
that's like a two-person, two intimate seated people
Right.
on a mini golf cart for I want to say it's $4,000. So you're right, that one is yeah, that's a great deal. I mean, that thing, like, I
That's
couldn't
cheaper than
believe
this
how
bike.
yeah. No, you don't get as much exercise, and this bike,
No.
I think, is even faster, even
Well,
though
you're
this
probably
bike only
pushing
goes
that thing
12
up the
miles an
hills,
hour.
so maybe you get the.
There you go.
All right, let's move on here. Um, check out Tenways newly launched lightweight 8-speed commuter e-bike. I love these.
Yeah, this one, we actually reviewed, maybe like 2 months ago, the belt drive version of this bike. This is the Tenways Seago 600 Pro. The belt drive was an awesome bike, and now they've come out with a chain driving version that has an 8-speed Shimano drivetrain. And as much as I love the belt drive one, because I'm somebody who lives in like flat coastal areas, I understand there are a lot of people that have hills and they don't like not being able to downshift. So I'm glad to see that Tenways did come out with a chain version. and it seems like it's got a nicer drivetrain here. You know, it's not the bottom barrel. I think it's like the lower to mid tier Shimano derailleur. They also have a slightly different motor we're looking at here. If you're on the video with us, I think that they had if I'm not mistaken, a Mevice motor on the belt drive one, and this is Tenway's own branded motor. I'm not sure if they actually produce it themselves. I kind of doubt it. They probably have it produced for them by one of several other motor companies. But those are sort of the two main differences on this new model, is that it's got most of everything else that we saw in the belt version, but this one has a different motor and a 8-speed chain drive. The rest of the bike is designed to be like a super lightweight, fairly no frills commuter e-bike. You know, you don't get suspension. You've got, you know, a lighter weight, rigid bike. The saddle's probably, you know, going to be less comfortable than those of you who are used to like big cruiser saddles, that sort of thing. But for someone who likes a more minimalist road style bike, I think this is really going to check a lot of boxes. You know, it's got a removable battery, which a lot of these bikes don't. It's got hydraulic disc brakes. The battery is UL. Oh, actually, no, this one I'm not sure if it is UL compliant. I think this is one that they didn't actually state, so we're still trying to figure out if this one has UL compliance. At $1,400, that's fairly low for a lot of the like higher safety and UL compliances we've seen. There are some companies like Electrek e-bikes that they've got that UL at a really low price point, but a lot of these other sort of budget level bikes are still sort of catching up on some of those compliance certifications. But the rest of the bike, in my opinion, it really does tick a lot of those commuter boxes. You know, you don't get like some super fancy app, you don't get like GPS tracking, etc. But what you do get is a lightweight, fairly solid, efficient e-bike here. And I think, Seth, you might be slated to be testing this one out a little
Oh,
later. Is that right?
that sounds great. Yeah, this is my favorite kind of bike where I can actually get a little exercise. We do have some pretty steep hills around here, and I was just looking at the specs: 36 volt, 10 amp hour battery, 350-watt motor. Those are all like, subtle, but with the gears and the lightweight, I think this is probably going to be, a perfect commuter bike for me. I really don't like the ability to just like fly up a hill. I mean, I do, but it doesn't really fit into my exercise routine. So this will be a nice change for that. I used to have this Rally, which I don't even know if the company's around anymore, but um, I used to have this Rally 250-watt Broza motor, and it was so good. It felt like I couldn't even tell that I was getting assist. So that's kind of my um, base level of e-bike.
Yeah, I will say that sometimes it's nice to have something to keep me honest. Like I get so used to these heavier, higher power e-bikes that when I'm back on a pedal assist only lightweight bike, it kind of like brings me back to sort of the original uh like ethos of cycling, and it, you know, reminds me of like, you know, why we got into this in the first place, that these weren't meant to be motorcycles, they're meant to be bikes with a bit of assist.
Right. That's exactly why I'm hoping this kind of fills that niche. I don't expect the sensors to be as good as the Rosa mid drive, because I think that's kind of the gold standard. But you know, something good here would be great. I think it would be great for my, and at $1,400, geez, might be good for a lot of people actually.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think Jamie has the belt drive version of this one as well, so it'll be interesting to compare notes, to see how
Did
this
he
chain drive one.
did he buy it, or was he reviewing it?
I think he got it used somewhere, yeah,
Oh,
like
interesting.
on Marketplace or something.
Cool. I will have to compare notes with him. All right, let's move on. This new electric cargo bike fits 5 people and isn't even that big.
Yeah, this is one of those bakfiets. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The Dutch word for these styles of cargo bikes, where they've got that big front bathtub looking thing on the bike, and you've got that extended front steering with the linkage. And while we've seen several of these sort of like front-loading bathtub style cargo bikes before, this new one from Decathlon, am I saying that correctly? I don't know how
I
you
think it's
pronounce
just
that store.
decathlon.
Decathlon? Oh, okay. I thought there's another A in there somewhere.
It's a
And
French company, I think, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, they
Not
have
sure,
they
it's
have
somewhere in Europe.
yeah, they have like these stores that are kind of just like sporting goods stores.
Oh, that's right. I was in one of those somewhere in Europe, now that you
Yeah.
mention it. I think Stockholm or something. Yeah. And so this is their like store brand of e-bike. And this is the first like super-sized front-loading cargo bike they've done. Now, obviously, we've seen lots of long-tail cargo bikes, and it's the same idea, carrying extra gear, extra passengers, children, whatever on the bike. But this style, it's interesting because they've both stretched and widened that front tub in the cargo section, and so you can fit 3 kids up there. Plus, there's room for a child seat on the rear rack that I think supports up to like 50 or 60 pounds, something like that. And so on this one bike, which is only slightly bigger than a traditional diamond frame bike, you can actually get 5 people. And if you consider, the equivalent vehicle that you would need to carry 4 kids, like that's not even a sedan. Like you're talking about a 3-row, minivan or SUV or something like that, because you can't put like the fourth small child up in the front seat. So you're talking about replacing an SUV here at this point with a 5-person, 4-child electric cargo bike. And now this one, I should point out, for right now, it's only available in Europe. They don't bring these to the US. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure how well this would sell in the US, because these front loader cargo bikes are just still sort of a foreign concept, I think, to a lot of cyclists in the US, even those that are used to riding with their kids or have like the kid seat on the back of their bike. The idea of just putting like 3 or 4 kids, especially in that front tub, is very foreign. But in Europe, I could see this being a really nice challenger to some of the like Urban Arrow and to the Reese and Moeller and those other like really nice sort of like Mercedes of cargo bike brands that make these front loading cargo bikes. The other nice thing about this one is that it actually comes with all of these cool accessories that are in these pictures if you're watching. In addition to that front tub, it comes with the rain cover. It comes with like all the harnesses, the side door to get in and out, all that kind of stuff that is usually an extra add-on, or you got to buy like the cargo package or the rain package, this, that. This all comes with it. So they make it just like one package. You don't have to, consider different packages or pay extra prices. If, as you can imagine, though, that results in a bit of a higher upfront cost. I think it's about 6,500 euros, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely into like Urban Arrow, Reese and Muller. Um, it's 6,400 US. Sorry, no, in euros, it's 5,000 euros. There we go. So certainly fairly expensive. I think that's actually lower than Reese and Muller though. So we're coming in under some of those really high end cargo bikes, but with a lot of the nice features that we're used to seeing in these really high end bikes that are designed for replacing cars and really being used on a daily basis, as opposed to what I think a lot of us are familiar with in North America, which is more of like the recreational style e-bike. You use it a couple of times a week, you take it out on the weekends, that sort of thing. These are more of the, you use it every day instead of getting a car, or this is like the family's second car type of bike. So, obviously more expensive. These front loaders require more, more engineering, more customized parts. So a lot of these components aren't produced by the hundreds of thousands or millions to get the same economy of scale. So you do end up with a more expensive bike, but in my opinion, I just think this is incredibly awesome. And if I had 4 kids, which thank goodness I don't, but if I did, this is how I would be riding them around.
Yeah. So a couple notes for me. Probably the best thing about this is that you're going to be able to order these, from decathlons all over Europe. The stores are everywhere, most malls. Theoretically, you might be able to try one out. I don't know how they are in the suburbs. I'm kind of used to only being in them in the cities, but this will put more people in these seats. I don't know, like, you know, how many people have 3 kids that would fit into that tub necessarily. Like that's a lot of that's a lot of youngins. But with in vitro fertilization these days, we have the Elon Musk of the world having twins and triplets. So maybe that's a new thing. Knock it all out at once. But maybe even you have a very light wife, and then you have 3 kids in the front, and you have the wife on the back. I don't know. There's a lot of options with this thing, so you love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, you get the chance to actually like watch the kids while they're in there. You're not wondering if they're like, screwing around on the back, hopping off, whatever. You can keep your eyes on them.
Yep, and you got the cover, mosquito repellent, I guess. Like a lot of nice things here. So unfortunately, we're not going to see this in the U.S. ever, right?
Probably not. I mean,
No.
there are front loader e-bikes available in the US. They're just super rare.
Yeah, like what Reese Mueller has one, I think, and
Yeah, Reese and Mueller, Urban Arrow, I believe, brought theirs to the US. I think there are a few sort of boutique brands, but they're kind of like a unicorn in the
yep.
US cycling market.
I did see a few at Upway, the kind of the recycler. So if you're looking for one and not too expensive in the U.S., Upway might be a good option there. All right, let's move on. More cops on electric bicycles are pulling cars over in traffic stops. Oof.
Yeah, this is a sort of a growing phenomenon we're seeing with more and more police departments in the US adding electric bicycles to their patrol fleets. We just, it was either yesterday or today, I think, had another example of the Denver Police Department adding. The LAPD has been big on electric bikes for years now. I think, was it Boulder added? There have just been a lot of police departments. We've seen a lot of school police departments as well, like high school, middle school, campus resource officers that are being given electric bicycles as patrol vehicles. So this is sort of a roundup of a few of the most recent ones we've seen. And there's some interesting comments from some of the police officers in here that have been using these. And you might be surprised by some of the use cases and some of the advantages that they're finding. So, obviously we think of bike cops as often like being around malls or in parks, places where you couldn't actually bring a police patrol vehicle. And so, we think of those as like these other areas, beaches, that kind of thing. But a lot of these bicycle mounted or e-bike mounted police officers are actually patrolling streets. They're doing like actual traffic patrol. And there are cases where they're pulling over cars. There are a few quotes from I think it's a high school resource officer that says they use it for policing traffic around the school. People that are driving dangerously or putting pedestrians or students crossing the street at risk. They'll pull cars over with these things. It is a police vehicle in every sense of the word here, but there are other advantages as well. A lot of these police departments are, they're really having to watch their budgets, not just when it comes to the fuel that's associated with police vehicles, but also the maintenance. That's a huge cost that goes into these police fleets when you have so many of these vehicles. Going electric can help. We've seen a lot of, Tesla police cars and some of these others. It does reduce some of the maintenance concerns, but those are still expensive vehicles. When you take instead of a $40,000 electric car and you replace it with a $3,000 to $4,000 high-end electric bicycle, not only do you have huge upfront savings, but your maintenance goes to like peanuts, right? Like occasionally you're getting a new set of tires, new brake pads. That's about it. So, the maintenance savings alone are huge for a lot of these police departments, which are already having to watch their budgets. And then you get into all the fitness advantages here as well. Obviously there are all these jokes about, like these officers being powered by donuts, whatever. Like we see it a lot in the comment sections. But there is something to be said for ensuring that police officers are in, good shape. That's an important part of the job. There's a reason you don't see like out of shape firemen, right? Like you kind of hope the same thing for police officers. And so if they're getting exercise on the job, if it's an active form of transportation, that's all the better as well. So I can definitely see a lot of advantages here. I haven't seen a lot of these in person. You know, I'm only in the US a few months out of the year. Do you often see police officers on e-bikes, Seth? I just feel like I haven't seen too many in the wild.
I don't. We live in a very hilly kind of suburban area, so I don't know if that would. I don't know if that would make sense because we're just not that densely populated. But when I do go to places like LA, they're pretty common, like Santa Monica. Um, I'm just trying to think. I don't think in New York that's typically the case, but
You see a lot of the mounted like horse cops like in New York
yes,
and
yes. I wonder if that would put the horses out of business. These guys.
I think the
I
horses would love to be put out of business.
Yeah, they are begging. No, uh, it would be a good use case, especially like Central Park. I'm sure New York uh, Police Department is doing e-bike stuff. I probably just haven't seen it. It makes a ton of sense in urban areas. Um, I was curious about the pulling people over. Do they have lights on them? Like how does that work?
Yeah, they have lights and sirens.
Okay,
Obviously,
I
there
see
are,
this.
many different companies that make. I think this one is a Recon, if I'm not mistaken, model. It's one of the like sort of like hunting style e-bike companies. So I think they make a like a police interceptor version. There's a Pedigo police bike.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Bowls makes a yeah. There's the Pedigo. This one is Bowls, I believe. Yeah, that worked with the LAPD. So they all like have their own designs, but they usually all have some type of lights and siren. And they're like technically they're officially police vehicles. Like, if they put their siren on and you run, like that's evading, right? Like, I mean, these are police vehicles and you have to pull over if they throw the lights on.
Right. Well,
Yeah, kind of
good for
wild.
good for them. Like that's a lot less to deal with, and you don't get like kids getting run over by bikes. Well, I guess you probably would, but it would be a lot less lethal than a
Yeah, you just
vehicle.
kind of dust yourself off and
Right.
get back up.
All right. I like the title on this one. I hope people got the joke. Startup plans to solve the many battery standards problem with a new battery standard.
Yeah, this is a company that is coming out of stealth mode now. They're called Bingo, and their goal is to basically sort of become like Gogoro, I guess. If you're familiar with Gogoro, it's a Taiwanese battery company that focuses on battery swapping, and that's sort of the model here. So Bingo, they said they've been active in like 6 countries already in Asia and Africa, and now they're going to be expanding into Europe. They're going to be unveiling their, I guess, European model at EICMA, the Milan Motorcycle Show next week that we'll be at. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see it. But this whole system is built around a single style of swappable battery. It's a 2 kilowatt hour unit, so about the size of like a toolbox or something you could carry in one hand. It's probably about 30 pounds or so, so not you know too terribly heavy. Something that is mobile, and the idea is that there are different scooters and motorcycles and tuk-tuks and even microcars that are built around this battery standard. They say they've got all sorts of vehicles already from all of those categories that work with the battery, and users would basically just roll up to these battery swapping cabinets where you'd open the door, you'd slide your depleted battery in, or a lot of these vehicles are going to use 2 or even 4 of these batteries. You put them in the cabinet, and then you get a freshly charged battery out, put it back in your vehicle, and you continue on your way. So you never have to stop and charge, and you don't have to worry about all of the charging issues, safety, time, that sort of thing. For that reason, they're really targeting a lot of commercial customers, it seems. So delivery companies, couriers, that type of thing. They say that they've had a lot of success for this in Africa. And as they come into Europe, they're going to sort of try and reproduce that model using their new battery standard. And they're going to be apparently unveiling a new microcar that they describe as Citroen Ami like. If you're not familiar with the Ami, it's a two-seater, what we kind of call a microcar. In Europe, it's what's known as the L7E classification, which is kind of like a faster version of a neighborhood electric vehicle in the US. I believe L7E means it's allowed to go up to something like 50, 55 miles an hour, something like 80, 90 kilometers per hour. So it is neat to see that this one battery is designed to go from everything from a scooter to a motorcycle to even these electric microcars. The question here, and sort of like the joke in the title there, though, is like, do we really need a new battery standard, or is this just Bingo's attempt to be one of the battery standards that can also make money in a market looking for battery standards? You know, we have obviously many different battery standards out there already. E-bikes use like a dozen or so different ones. Gogoro is probably the most well-known internationally, though theirs are largely used in scooters and motorcycles right now. I think there's a couple three-wheeled tuk-tuks that use them, and there's one example of a four-wheeled microcar that showed a concept of using them. Kimco, in another major scooter maker that's also Taiwanese, has a competing standard compared to Gogoro's. They don't have as many out there. But the point is, there are a lot of these swappable batteries. And while there are some companies like, Bingo here, Kimco, Gogoro, that are trying to make the battery standard, there are other companies that are making these swapping cabinets designed to fit with all of these different batteries. So there are a lot of solutions out there already. It's neat to see that Bingo has targeted such a wide range of vehicles here, and apparently already has many of them operating. But that being said, I'm just not sure that what the world needs is another battery standard on top of the many that we have. I think there are already many good battery standards out there. I don't know. Am I crazy, Seth? Do we need more battery standards?
Well, so yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like Gogoro has kind of become the standard, maybe. But the problem with Gogoro is that they make their bikes, so a company like Kimco or Yamaha or whatever would be less likely to want to compete with or want to take a battery with one of their competitors. So I guess the idea with this company, Bingo, is that we're not going to compete on the actual bikes and cars and tuk-tuks and motorcycles and trikes and whatever. We're just going to make the battery. Maybe that is an advantage. I'm not sure. It would be nice if they said, hey, we're making our own standard, but also, we're compatible with Gogoro or we're compatible with Kimco or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, you and I have talked offline and online and off about how it would be nice if there was a battery standard, and not just in motorcycles and tuk-tuks and tiny cars, but like lawn equipment and e-bikes. That to me would be the big one. Like, we need a 1 kilowatt hour battery, 48 volt, 20 amp output, like a rectangle from a company or from multiple companies. It's a standard, so any company can make it as long as it's a certain size, certain output, and it would work on theoretically all e-bikes and all lawn equipment. Although kilowatt hour might be overkill for a weed whacker. I don't know. It just feels like there should be a standard across all these things, because the batteries are all the same. Like, we have the AA standard and the 9 volt standard for the old batteries, and I guess there's a 6 volt lantern battery that you could almost kind of start to think about it as a you could put like 5 of those in a e-bike or something. But it really is time for us to kind of start thinking about a standardized form factor for these batteries.
Yeah, and I'm sort of at a loss of what could bring about that standard, because if I think about sort of recent examples, it seems like there's two ways for these standards to come about. If you look at the NACS charging standard, that was sort of like a critical mass, right? So like Tesla was big enough, and then when they opened it up, and there were enough companies that said we're going to do that, and now everyone kind of has to adopt that standard. But then if you look at something like USB-C, it took regulations until Apple was like, all right, fine, we'll use
Right.
USB-C because we have to. So either there's got to be a company that's big enough and develops enough of a critical mass that everyone adopts it, and of course that it's open for adoption, or we need regulation, which a lot of people don't like to see government come in and start regulating, especially
Oh,
small electric vehicles.
I don't know. I think everybody's happy about Apple going USB-C. So, like, as long as the government does a good job and picks the right standard, I think that's okay. Also, I would note that like Tesla only kind of opened the NACS standard because they wanted to get government money for their chargers um, rollout. So the government did play a role in that particular one, but you know,
Interesting. All right.
maybe there's a way. Maybe that's a great idea. Like say, all right, if you want your Chinese batteries to come into the U.S. and get the same discount that an American or some of the discount that an American made battery is going to take, it has to have this interface. It has to be standardized. I think there's an opportunity. I think there's I'm sure the government isn't thinking about this, but I imagine that there would be an opportunity if the right plan came together to standardize the batteries so that you could you get your weed whacker breaks and you want to get another brand of weed whacker and you don't have to buy a new battery and you're not wasting all these things, or you have a weed whacker and you want to get an e-bike but you don't want to buy a battery, so you just put the weed whacker battery on your e-bike, stuff like that.
Yeah, I just wonder like how long it would take for e-bikes and motorcycles and scooters to become so mainstream that the government actually has enough of a reason to create this standard. Like, how many decades did we have cell phones before finally there was regulation on charging for cell phones, right? And I don't think e-bikes
Yeah.
are going to be at that level of proliferation anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, this is a interesting shot. We'll see if bingo lasts in the marketplace or what happens there. Maybe it's the start of something better. Maybe it'll force Gogoro to open standards to others. I don't know. Let's go to our last story. And by the way, if you guys are listening live, and I see that 577 people are, um, shoot us a comment or a question, and we'll try to answer it after this last story. This one is see the electric motorcycles Russian soldiers are now using.
Man, I didn't know we had so many people listening. Now the pressure's on.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, so here is an interesting story. I'll tell you right off the bat. Unfortunately, we don't have too many tech specs about this Russian electric motorcycle yet. As you can imagine, a lot of this stuff is a bit opaque to the Western world. But there is this new motorcycle produced by Kalashnikov, which is the one from the rifle you're thinking of,
Yep.
but they produce more than just weapons, mostly weaponized vehicles. But
Okay.
this is from their vehicle department, and it is a new electric motorcycle designed for tactical use. So basically, it's an electric dirt bike type vehicle. Think of like a scaled up Suron style vehicle, and it's designed to be tested on the front lines in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's also interesting here because we've seen Ukraine using electric bikes and motorcycles for a couple of years now, almost since the beginning of the war. And so it's taken a few years, but it seems like Russia's finally sort of adopting that idea that perhaps instead of throwing a whole bunch of museum piece tanks at the problem, that perhaps something lighter, more efficient, easier to produce might be a solution. And it makes sense. I mean, electric bikes, especially Suron style electric trail bikes, have actually been fairly common in armies around the world over the last few years. We've seen a lot of examples of this, but they have so many advantages. I know that Ukraine is using them in a couple of different roles already. One is for anti-tank teams, so they'll actually mount NLAW rockets on their Delfast bikes, and they've probably adopted them to other platforms by now as well. And where there's Russian armor operating, they can basically ride in very stealthily, get into position, and fire off an anti-tank rocket without the tank even knowing that they're there. The same advantages play in with their sniper teams. The Ukrainians have put two-man sniper teams on e-bikes, and it's another example of how you can basically insert very stealthily, even if there are drones up in the air using infrared looking for heat signatures. Obviously, an e-bike's not going to have a heat signature like the tailpipe of a gasoline-powered dirt bike, and so you're able to get into places very stealthily. If you're a sniper team, take a shot and get back out without being located or seen by drones or any other reconnaissance. So it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of funny to see Russia take this long to get into the game. Like I said, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of specs here from Kalashnikov on what they've built into this bike. We can see what looks like probably a Suron style, like 6 or 8 kilowatt electric motor that's mid-mounted. And so this looks fairly standard to a lot of what we've seen. Some of it could be copied as well. There are also some great comments on this story about how the range isn't so important if it's only making a one-way trip and other things like that. And if you followed some of the more, I guess, comical antics of the Russian army, this goes along with some of their like electric golf carts and some of the other strange vehicles they've put into action that rarely stay in action very long. So it's kind of par for the course, I guess, for Russia, but at least now we're seeing them adopt some strategies that the rest of the world seems to have figured out for a while now. Not to get too political here, but whatever your thoughts are on that conflict, they are. But it seems like Ukraine's had quite an advantage when it comes to e-bikes for a long time. I don't know. Would you want to use one of these for a more peaceful purpose, Seth? To me, it looks like it'd be a fun ride.
Yeah, it looks like a nice bike. I mean, clearly they probably just repurposed some Chinese parts. Like nothing seems like out of the ordinary or something we didn't see before. Like if you saw this thing on Alibaba, you wouldn't think twice, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it was made by Kalashnikov.
No, or maybe outsourced by Kalashnikov or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's great to see electric bikes out there. Also, like Russia's kind of known for having like really cheap, unlimited oil. Surprising that they're thinking about e-bikes in that context. But yeah, I mean, good to see it. Like it kind of means that like even with free oil, e-bikes have an advantage. Clearly noise, refueling them doesn't require actual oil. Like you can just set up a solar place or plug into any recently captured school building or something. You have a lot of options.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, the solar charging would just be huge for the field, right? Because you could just roll out a few
Yeah.
rolled up solar panels, even.
Yep. And the quiet is also important in battle. My understanding is so. All right, let's move on to questions. We had a few. We started a little bit late because the time change, but if you guys have any other questions, you have a few seconds now to ask before we're done. Sea Washing 805 says, where to get Fray e-bikes repaired in Los Angeles or USA? I recently had my Fray CC repaired. That's a high power bike with that kind of just melts chains and sprockets. But the good thing is they use pretty standardized parts. So I got a new sprocket, new chain pretty easily. But what do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good point, is that if it's anything on the bike side, most shops that can work on mountain bikes will be able to work on a Fray, because fortunately they not only use standard parts, but they use pretty high quality bike parts. So, most bike shops are not going to turn their nose up at you because you actually have some good hardware. The electric side, though, like if you got an issue with your Bafang motor, that's going to be a little bit trickier. I believe Frey does have a warehouse in the US now, but I'm not sure that they do local repairs. So always the best bet is to go to the manufacturer and determine what their sort of recommended course of action is. I don't think that they have a branded repair shop, but I know that they have been expanding their dealer base. And so they might have certain shops around the country that are set up to service their motors and their components that they use if it's something on the electrical side. But at least for the mechanics, you should be able to go to most reputable bike shops.
Good to know. All right, moving on. Speaking of multi-purpose batteries, there's a Trike by Tool Company Super Handy that uses a tiny 4 amp hour lithium 48 volt battery. So that's 200, not even 200 kilowatt hours or
Whatever.
watt hours. Yeah. Wondering if that means that it would be easy to use any 48 volt batteries with it.
I mean, theoretically, so whenever it comes to swapping out batteries for like non-standard batteries, there's two issues. There's the simple issue of just making an electrical connection, which, for example, if you have like a rad power bike, basically you just cut off the existing battery mount and you hook up your positive and negative wires and you're good to go. The second issue is if there's any sort of digital handshake happening there. And that's usually only in nicer design systems. So again, like I'm an e-bike guy, so I relate this all back to e-bikes. If you look at like a Bosch system, it's not as simple to just like cut off the battery and put like any AliExpress battery on there. When you're talking about these tool companies, lots of times they don't have any specific digital handshake. Lots of times the thing that's preventing you from using other batteries is just some annoying physical manufacturer, like a nub on the battery that physically doesn't let others fit, that sort of thing. So I don't know this tool company. It looks like it's called Super Handy. I don't know this one specifically, but as long as it's not some super sophisticated system where they've engineered their own board that has some digital handshake that only allows their batteries to work with it, then you could probably literally, like grind out whatever the battery receptacle is, find the positive and negative wires, and just make a custom connection. Now, I should probably say that I'm not recommending doing that. Don't like poke around in batteries if you're not comfortable. And even if you are, there's a lot of, other caveats as well. But just if we're talking, theoretically here, then theoretically, I believe that would be possible.
Yeah, it's always kind of a mystery what's behind door number one when you're dealing with like off the shelf or when you're dealing with like OEM batteries. And that's one of the things we were talking about earlier. It would be nice if there was like some sort of standardization, even if there is a handshake. Like, let's know what the handshake is. Maybe open source that thing so that people can kind of start. I mean, the point is like waste. Like you don't want to waste a battery. Nobody's going to sell their Greenworks batteries. Well, maybe on eBay, but like it's just one of those things where like you could be saving tons of money. And these companies aren't really innovating in the battery space. They're all using the same stuff. So why not, innovate on the tool side or the bike side and not have to, do your own batteries. So kind of get where you're coming from. We should also note that a few companies like Ego and Greenworks are building their own bikes or outsourcing their own bikes that take their batteries. So if you do have a Ego lawnmower and you don't want to have to buy a battery or you want to pay less for a good e-bike and use the same charger that your lawnmower uses, those are available now. You can actually get those pretty common now. So kind of happening. And I guess the idea is like, well, eventually there'll only be a few types of batteries and vehicles. So they will kind of become the standard, right?
Theoretically, one day.
Yeah, one day. All right, that's all for the questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. It was great having you, and we will see you back here in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast.